Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. Here we have Vandana Verma as our speaker. She is chairman and board of directors of OWASP, and she is going to talk about new vulnerabilities and how to tackle them. So, super awesome session is going to start. Get ready, and whatever you learn or any aha moments you get, make sure you drop them down in the chat section so we can also see it. You can ask questions to Vandana in the Q&A section. We will take all your questions at the end. And whatever polls Vandana will take, please do answer them and engage. This is going to be an interactive session. So let's start, Vandana. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Ready? I hope you can see my screen. I assume yes. Okay, so here we are going to be talking about new vulnerabilities and how to tackle them. Let me give a brief background about myself. I'm currently working at a company named Sneak. It's a software security company. Some people call it as Sync, but it's Sneak. And I'm their first employee. So we are hiring a lot of people, software engineers. If you want to join Sneak, please do reach out to me. And when it comes to open source communities, I love working with them and currently working as chair for OWASP, which is Open Web Application Security Project, and I'm part of Infosec Girls, Kids, and Diversity. Let's go back to this. Now, what do you see this? This is the futuristic image of something that we all want, wherein we want to interact with the robots, we want to interact with the latest and greatest technologies, and we want to make sure that we are uh, getting responses from them, we are getting the ample of information from them, and they're part of our life. But what happens when, if there's an update, and with that update there is a malicious software that gets downloaded? Now when that happens, they might be tracking you, they might be taking all the information. We have kids at home, we have parents at home, we have so many people at home, and they might be tracking us everywhere. So how exactly developers play a role in security incidents? Now, especially if I talk about software supply chain ecosystem, it is booming up like anything. At the same time, software supply chain attacks are also booming up. We've seen the cases where we've said, oh, okay, these attacks, but they have been there for a very long time. Solar winds happened. But are we new to supply chain attacks? No, they have been there for a very, very long time. But now, when the big hacks are happening, we are realizing, oh, we need to look at them as well. And how much do we care about software security? It also brings that to the light. So, have you ever seen developers becoming a malware distribution vehicle? I wouldn't imagine it. But the cases like this, like where an Evenstream incident happened, where there was a backdoor which was installed and a lot of people started using it, it was acting as a crypto miner. But now, all these incidents, they just don't happen overnight. It Evenstream as a package has been there since 2011. And then over a period of time, there are certain enhancements which have happened, and for 2 years there was no update on that. But when it comes to downloads, there were millions and millions of downloads that were there. Now with that downloads, if there is a malicious package, if somebody installs, who would get to know? So there are cases where these malicious packages were embedded and they were creating a havoc. And at the same time, when these packages are installed, how much do we care about the dependencies, like third party dependencies, or anything that we deal with the third party vendors? This is the mental blob that we have about our app, that this is our app. But this is the code that we actually think of. Oh, okay, this is the code that we have. Now, the most important aspect is that if somebody starts attacking the heart of developer tooling itself, now malwares are coming from the maintainers, but if developer tooling, like I use IDs day in and day out, even though I'm a security person, but then there are things that I do. I use Visual Studio code. I use many other IDEs. Now, when that happens, so think about Visual Studio Code. Just last year, there was a vulnerability which was reported in Visual Studio Code, and by leveraging that, People could actually take over someone else's repo as well. How scary that would be. And now, when that happens, it brings us to a point that do we really care about the state of open source security? There is a research which shows that 80 to 90% of the code that is on the internet is all open source, and rest is all native built code or the insider code. And let me give you this classic case of markdown cross-site scripting vulnerability. Now, if you look at this, it was reported in 2015. And when was it fixed? In 2016. It was 1 year. Like, it took 1 year to fix this bug. And the whole case of Equifax, what happened? There was a vulnerability which was notified, there was a release that was done, and then what happened? There was a patch available, exploit available, people started exploiting it. Even though there is a cycle of patching, but sometimes that patching cycle is uh, like people start exploiting it, and you'll see it was just released yesterday or today and people have started exploiting it. And that's what we do, right? If there's a patch that is available or if there is a exploit that is available, we start exploiting in the test environment and we start understanding what it is all about. So malicious actors also can do that. They started doing that, and what happened? The breach happened, and we are still talking about it. It's been 4 5 years. What did we learn from it? That we need to detect these issues as fast as possible. We need to take action on them as early as possible. And we need to do it at scale, not just one application, but all of our applications that needs to be addressed. At the same time, when we talk about that, we need to look at the maintainers account. In 2017, there was a research done at the NPMJS ecosystem where they were trying to figure out weak credentials. And what came to limelight that 14% of the ecosystem. Now that's a huge number where they had issues. And it is not just with npm.js, it is issues. It can be with Java, it can be Python, it can be any other ecosystem as well. Leave the fact about multi-factor authentication. Now here we are talking only about the credentials. And then the issues like heap-based buffer overflow and pseudo vulnerability comes in. Like pseudo is not new. It's been there for forever. Like this utility is being used everywhere in Linux. Now, what happens if there is a vulnerability that exists like this? Any unprivileged user can gain access gain root access to the vulnerable host. How scary that would be. And on top of it, this vulnerability itself has been hiding in the plane for over 10 years. It's a very, very long time. And then the supply chain comes into it. Now, let me tell you an interesting aspect. Um, right now, I am a maintainer of a project. Especially with open source, I am maintainer of two projects. While I work on them, I might get busy. After a while, I'll stop updating. I'll say, no, I can't update. And then tell everyone that I'm going to remove these dependencies. And suddenly I just pull off my hand. What will happen next? There's a big problem that's going to happen. Similarly, with these ecosystems, where we started removing these with these libraries, organizations started to realize that they need to understand what libraries they are using, because sometimes organizations don't even have a track of it, that they're using it and suddenly the maintainers have stopped supporting it. And in a recent case, just last month itself in January, Caller and Faker, these are two popular packages which are part of npm.js or JavaScript ecosystem, wherein in Caller package, what the maintainer did, they added a loop condition where if any package with that condition gets executed, there will be a denial of service. And people were downloading it because there are millions of downloads of that package. And suddenly there is an issue. Why? Because maintainer was not getting support for working on those open source components. Now these things happen. On top of it, what happens if we don't support it? And what are there any liabilities with these open source softwares? No, because they are trying to give their valuable time. And suddenly, if they don't support, it's fine. But what we can do as individuals, as organizations, and can support them so that they have the bandwidth to work on these components. which is benefiting many of organizations. And what inside these registries? Has anyone checked? There are times when there are malicious packages, there are vulnerabilities which are part of these packages, which we don't even get to know for many months. Now, this is the case of last year, where Python package index, there were multiple vulnerabilities in the libraries. But how soon did we realize? And that impacted not just small, medium companies, but it created a dependency confusion with the companies like Apple, Microsoft, and dozen of many other companies. And that brings us to the point: are we going to have less or more software secure software in the future? Are we going to have less or more open source software in the future? Obviously, we're going to have more. And then comes Log4j, which is a very, very popular package in the Apache logging framework. And everybody went crazy. Oh, am I using it? Am I vulnerable? Am I dealing with the impact, which is like huge on the architectures? And then this Jindy attack to many other multiples. Now, why were we even concerned about it? Because there are certain regulatory compliance failures that was happening. There was issue with the cloud security controls. To people could execute the remote code injection. Now, this brings us to a point that can anyone deploy malware or ransomwares? Maybe if I can embed a file, I can embed a malware as well on your server, which will lead to data integrity issues, availability issues, and whatnot. So these vulnerabilities bring us to the point that we need to be very alert and keep a track of what we have. All these remote code executions will keep happening. And okay. So what I did is, here I actually created a small library. Generally, what I do is, this is a rec query from Express.js framework that I'm using here. And while I use that, there is there is there is a file that I've picked up, just a single dependency, which has a sanitize function. And if you see that there is an index of which is there, and it is also escaping certain characters and converting it. Like, I would say that there is a proper escaping which is there here, while it takes it as a string, while the input is being given as a string. Now, what happens if I change the input? Right now, it is taking as a string. And if I change it to something else, maybe let's say array, right now it is taking as like a complete thing. Okay, let me forward. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and go to the application. And it is not the problem with the Express framework. It is the problem with the kind of input that we give. Because if we change the input, or if we change the value that is given into a function that's changed, that means it will not be validating it. There will not be any sanitization that will happen. And here, the alerting system will alert. So the problem here is that we need to look at that. If we change just the small thing, what will happen? If we change the value, what will happen? And that's the kind of validation that we need with the applications. Like right now, here we see this simply, that we did not change anything. We just put it as like a string. If you see, it has escaped here, like properly sanitizing it, right? Now let me go ahead and move forward and show you. Here, I can add arrays. I can go ahead and replicate this vulnerability. Now, similarly, uh, the dev environment should be like where anyone at any given point of time uh, play around with it, fix the bugs if there is any bug that comes into the limelight. And at the same time, how exactly we can take help from these ecosystems? We can go ahead and take help from OWASP community. We can take help from the open source ecosystem and understand these dependency vulnerabilities and fix the application level vulnerabilities. Attackers are targeting open source. Vulnerability can actually create issues for many victims, many organizations. And application security is challenging. But where it can take us to, it can actually put us in a situation where we have one foot in the open source and other foot in the cloud native environments. When we are moving to cloud, we are talking about cloud native environments. So what if the security was easier, developer friendly, and actionable? There are many best practices for open source which is there. Let's go ahead and start using them. Let's go ahead and start leveraging them. Open source is amazing, but let's use it responsibly. Now another aspect is that, oh, everybody used to say that, at least I remember while growing in the security portion or industry, that if there is a bug, the security people will have like sleepless nights, and especially on Fridays, a 0 day will drop off and everybody will have a problem. But now it is not just the case with them, it is anyone and everyone, even developers, testers, anyone, everyone is involved while we talk about it. Oh, thank you so much. So let's be more responsible while we talk about security. And I wanted to keep it very, very short because I wanted to take questions from the audience. Or I can go on and on for hours. That's what I do. Now, let me go ahead and take questions here. Okay, let me go back and see. Do enterprise hire project maintainers to fix open source vulnerabilities? I believe they would, especially see. This is very very simple question here. Enterprise don't hire like a project maintainers, but sometimes collaborate with them. But I have seen organizations keeping a portion of them, or they hire specific people to maintain certain projects. I don't want to name the companies, but they support those open source projects, which is amazing. But at times these wonderful open source projects don't get support from anyone, and that's where they tend to die, or they tend to not see any update. And I'll tell you one interesting fact. There are cases wherein there was a project which was not getting updated. There is a person who comes and says that, oh, I want to help out. Now they help for certain releases, but what happened next? There is malicious code that they inject after a while, and then that's being used everywhere, and suddenly there is a huge cry everywhere. What will you do in that case, right? So we have to test our ecosystem. We'll have to have maintain a cmdb or a proper library of what we have in our environment, or we'll tend to have issues for sure. Okay, please put your questions, please drop your questions in your chat box, and I would love to have interactions with you, or any feedback about the session, any input that you feel that should have been there, or that you liked about. Do feel free to post your questions there.
Yeah, guys, you can post your questions in the Q&A panel. From there, we will take on one by one, and Vandana will answer it.
Yes. Okay, someone says it's a green wall behind. No, it's not a green wall, it's a green screen that I've put in because that's like the safest option for me. I feel people can actually run behind me, and nobody would get to know. So at Air Meet, I can't change the virtual background, but uh, whenever you are living in the virtual world, it's best to have like the green screen or a blue screen at the back. No, 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 no. I don't have a green wall. I have all the cream walls.
All right, so Vandana, thank you so much for the amazing session. Guys, if you have any questions or if you want to talk to Vandana one on one, you can go to the lounge area. There, she can address your questions in a live call. So, thank you so much, Vandana. And you can drop your social media links in the chat section so people can follow you there. Meanwhile, we got uh, one question or something. Let me put it on the presentation. Yeah. You're on mute, Vandana.
Okay, I can see the question. You said the open sources are amazing. Open source is amazing, right? And you also said that most of the people are misusing it and injecting some code. Oh, no, 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 no. This is not what I meant. Open source is totally amazing. What I meant here is that uh, there are only some people who are misusing it, but there are some wonderful people who can support these open source projects, where if they need effort, if they need money, that people can support, organizations can support. Sometimes what happens is that I run a project but I don't have time, and you come and say, oh, I am ready to help you, then I would be more than happy to take your help. I meant that. But there are certain people who misuse that. Only like 1% of it. Rest of the people, they just need help from you. So let's support open source projects. Maybe you want to help with language change, or maybe you want help with some code change, or you know about that project and you want to spread awareness about that. You can help in any way possible. And that's what I feel. So
All right. I hope you got your question cleared. Thank you so much, Vanna. Let's end the session now. And guys, there's half an hour more for the next session. So you can hang out in the networking area or in the lounge. Thank you so much, Vanna. See you.
thank you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.